Hello, everyone. Welcome to Tuesday edition of Take 5. We've been looking at this enigmatic book called Ecclesiastes all summer long and seeing what riddles it has to throw at us regarding life and questions and even issues that we deal with every day. We're going to deal with issues today of Ecclesiastes 5, of what we say with our mouth, what we promise, even promise to God, and even some of our behavior. John Sununu, you probably don't know that name. John Sununu was the chief of staff, I think was his title, of President Bush, the first President Bush. And I heard him give a speech some years ago at the University of Akron. And the phrase that he kept using as the responsibility for his role as chief of staff is that he serves an audience of one. Basically meaning that he doesn't act or speak in such a way to please the masses or even to please the cabinet or a lot of people. He's got one, a constituency of one that he has to please, and that was his president. In many ways, that's our calling. If we call ourselves Christians, our calling is to please one, and that is our Father in heaven. Regardless of what other people think of us, regardless of our desire to be liked, our ultimate audience is an audience of one, and that is God. And the writer of Ecclesiastes, again, as an enigma, he's going to remind us of that because he's going to turn it around and say, be careful when you don't do that. Listen to what he says. He says this, and he's talking about worship. Keep the Sununu story in mind, but now think about yourself when you prepare yourself on, let's say, on Saturday night or Sunday morning, wherever you go to worship. As you prepare your heart and mind going to worship, you got to think through it carefully, and you've got to, in a sense, enter in reverently. Here's what he says. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Of course, he's talking Jewish believers and going into synagogue or temple. But it applies to us too. Guard your steps when you go to the house of God. Go carefully. Don't just go like you're going to a Major League Baseball game. When you're going to worship, watch how you walk. And that's a metaphor for your heart, your mind, your thoughts, your character, your attitude. Jesus would even say, if you come to the altar and you're about to present something for worship and you remember that somebody's ticked at you or you're mad at somebody, go make it right with them before you ever come to worship. And then, having made it right, come to God. Because that's reality. And we can't fake it when we go to worship. Here, I'm going to continue, middle of verse 1. To draw near to listen is better than to offer the sacrifice of fools, for they do not know that they are doing evil. What is he saying? He's saying it's better to come into worship and just listen. Don't talk. Don't make promises. Don't offer the sacrifices of worship and sing all kinds of songs that you really don't mean in your heart. Don't do any of that. Just be quiet. Just listen. He says, too, don't be rash with your mouth, and don't let your heart be hasty to utter a word before God. For God is in heaven, and you are on earth. Let your words be few. What's he saying here? Be careful what you say. Be careful how you pray. Be careful because ultimately God is in heaven, and he is hearing every word you're saying. Go back to Sununu. And so the words that I say, maybe the gossip that I have with the person at church before service starts, or the mindless singing that I sing of these songs that really have no meaning to my life at all, or any other conversation I have sort of in the context of church or worship, but really in any relationship. He says, be careful because God is in heaven. Let your words be few because he knows what you're saying, and he ultimately is your audience. As you prepare your heart for worship, and let's face it, worship is more than just an hour on Sunday morning. Our entire life is meant to be a sacrifice of worship before the Lord. Before we determine how we're going to live and talk and act, Remember, you have an audience of one. It is God in heaven. So let your words be few and do a whole lot of listening and a whole little talking, because God is your audience. I'll see you Thursday. We're going to continue in Ecclesiastes 5. I'll see you.